Welcome to another episode of the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast, hosted by Tim and Andreas. In today's episode, they will dive into the current and contentious topic of the workplace shift, specifically focusing on the new mandate from Amazon that requires employees to return to the office 5 days a week. Our hosts will discuss the broader implications of such changes, including how they affect workforce dynamics and the evolving landscape of business operations. Join them as they explore the challenges and potential opportunities that come with transitioning from remote to hybrid and full-time office setups, and what this means for businesses and employees alike. Get ready for an engaging and insightful conversation. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast with myself and Mr. Co-Conspirator. I kind of like the way that sounds, Tim. I don't know. I want to introduce you any other way. Co-Conspirator sounds kind of,
Uh,
maybe it'll become official one day in a company, I guess. I don't know. So anyways,
hope not.
we're back to another Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. So Tim, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, yeah, it's kind of an exciting week. We had a series of articles of late, and probably the one that's been getting a lot of headlines is coming out of Amazon. It's been, in kind of almost every business magazine here, which is the mandated return to office 5 days a week. And I think, this is a really appropriate topic. It's one that we've been talking about for several years now as we've been doing these podcasts, which is the effectiveness of this. So, I think it's this return to office full time, flexible work schedule or hybrid, as is now known, and then, of course, the people that are still wanting to be 100% digital and virtual. So that's the topic. Let's just throw it out there. Let you
Yeah.
go first, Mr. Andreas.
Oh, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind on this, and there's like five different things on my mind right now, so I shouldn't say the first thing. But one of the topics is if you think about when a lot of companies virtualized, during the pandemic, they kind of prefaced it to the employees that like this is going to be the new thing, the new operating model. And so you have a lot of employees who picked up and moved from higher cola locations like parts of California and parts of the Northeast of the US to the Midwest to like, Arizona, Texas to Florida. And so they were outside of the radii of wherever their company, their physical brick and mortar location was, right? And so now you have these companies starting to come back and say, well, no, it's hybrid. And nope, now it's 5 days a week. And so what you're doing is, and like the other thing I want to say here, this probably isn't going to be a super popular opinion, but whatever. Um, I believe in the rights of the business to be able to do that. Like if they want to mandate coming back to office 5 days a week, then that's their prerogative.
Well,
I believe in that. However, I also believe in you have to face the consequences of the actions that you take. So I would say these folks that have, virtualized or dispersed, that's talent. And I think a lot of companies actually thrived in, objectively speaking, thrived during the pandemic. And you saw the emergence of technology being utilized in different ways. It may not be ways that it was initially invented for or purposed for, but we found alternative means to utilize effectively that technology. And so now, for a variety of other metrics and reasons, RTO, return to office. And so what you're doing now is you are reducing your talent radius to wherever your old school brick and mortar location is. Now, again, there's, maybe more youthful talent coming out of those locations that have potential and thinking and positive attributes, but you're also just, again, objectively speaking, limiting the amount of available talent for the characteristics of what you need that talent to be able to do and drive outcomes to be productive for your business. So that's kind of the one of the first things that jumps out to me right there.
yeah.
What do you think?
No, I agree. And it keeps going back to me and whether this is, and I don't think this is a last 5 year conversation. I think it's over the last 25 years, which is
Yeah.
really what are you managing to? What are you expecting from people? And what's important? I mean, in the old office environment, and now I'm going to really date myself, but people spend a lot of time wanting to be in the office before their boss and stay till after their boss left.
Yep.
It was more about appearance rather than did I ever actually get the work done that I needed to get done. I used to joke
Yeah.
about watching people come in and, they'd show up at 9 and open up the newspaper and read till 10 and then go get a cup of coffee. And they may not actually sit down and start doing any of their assigned work until like 11. Oh, then 45 minutes later, it's time to get ready for lunch.
Yep.
And so you'd be lucky if you got 2 or 3 working hours in out of all of that. And here I don't want to, this is not, you want to be careful. Like there's a lot of people who have a lot of task driven work, people that are working trouble tickets, people that are
Right.
doing QA on lines, people that are, in customer facing roles that have to be in those roles to do their work, right? You can't be remote and be at the front desk for it. You can't be a server in a restaurant virtually, at least not yet.
No,
But
yeah, not yet.
yeah,
It's kind of trending. All right.
yeah. But the point is like, okay, so you can have return to office. Great. So you're going to have 100% of your staff come in and they're going to work, 40, 50, 60-hour work week, whatever's compliant with the labor laws and associated with their jobs, whether they're exempt or non-exempt. But what are you getting in exchange for that expense is, I think, the other side of the conversation. I mean, we have this great Gallup poll from the beginning of the year that says the average engagement is 30%. That means 30% of your workforce is actually engaged in doing the job.
Right.
Whoa, that's like, I mean, just as having the fiduciary responsibility of being a senior executive in a company, especially if it's a public company, how is the money of my investors being spent to deliver the services that my company provides to the marketplace?
Well, here's just something I'm really, really chomping at a bit to share. I was going to share it in the EX 2025, and frankly, I kind of missed my chance, but I think it's absolutely what you're just saying right now. If you look at a lot of these companies, they have a marketing image, and I'm going to specifically use the verbiage marketing image. So
Mhm.
it's these great place to work awards. It's these whatever there's another one out there that I'm drawing a blank on, but like these the companies will share that they are, oh, we're inclusive, we're diverse, and we're this and we're that. But you go look at their actual metrics, like their P&L, if they're a publicly traded company, they're not doing so hot. And if you look at, if you're really doing all of these things, why don't you share your actual turnover numbers? Why don't you actually share your workforce ethnicity percentage breakout and this, and that? So it's like they're not sharing the hard metrics that objectively prove they're doing what they say. No, it's this arbitrary award that's based off of a, survey of selected individuals or whoever they administer to. Even let's talk about the frequency once a year, right? And so that's what I mean by it's a marketing side of things. But I like to look at things objectively and say, look, are you doing these things? It sounds like it, and that's good to focus on these things. Why isn't it matching in your numbers? And that's the important thing. And that's where I think that
Yep.
disengagement survey is so important because Gallup is doing it at the employee level, not just at a senior executive or management level, mid-management. They're doing it up and down at all of them. And the frontline workers are unequivocally saying, yeah, we're disengaged. Like they don't talk to us. They treat us like, cogs.
Well, right. And, kind of, again, going back to what are you asking people to do in their work, right? If it's just to sit at a desk and be present, okay, then that's good. I mean, then you're getting what you're paying for. I don't think a lot of companies are doing that. The other thing too, I think that whether we want to acknowledge it or not, and we have a client or a client that we're working with right now that they have a significant portion of their workforce was hired during the pandemic. We're now halfway through, more than halfway through
Yeah.
2024. So for many people, it's been almost 5 years, right? So you think about this particular group and their annual churn, they're probably hiring 10 to 15% new population every year. So in the course of the 3 years of the real lockdown, right, they probably replaced probably 40 to 45% of their team. And a lot of these people were new to the workforce. They had never worked in an office
Yeah.
before, and they don't have that experience of, oh, I got to get up in the morning, get dressed, and commute to the office and do my thing and then commute home. They've never done that. And so now this group is going through a RTO mandate, and the issues that are coming up are, it's kind of like they make sense, but those of us who used to work in an office for years would go, why are you asking this question? Like, number one, who's paying for my commute? Because by
Yeah.
the way, that commute, at least here in Northern California where I live, if you're in 5 days a week and you throw in a lunch in there, you're probably talking $15,000 minimum in costs a year. And
Yeah.
that's after tax money because you can't write that off.
Right.
And so, wow, that means depending on your tax range, you need, say, roughly $25,000 in income to pay for that $15,000 in commute costs. Well, $25,000 is if you're making, let's say, $75,000 and, maybe going paycheck to paycheck. And now I got to find $25,000 more of pre-tax income. That's a big deal. Um,
Well, then
and then
they start calculating all of that, and they're like, all right, well, how much is the U-Haul to move to Florida? Yep. Or
well,
yeah,
or how much is it to go online and start looking for virtual
exactly.
jobs? Or what I think is what we're going to get a lot of. You're going to get a lot of people doing RTO, and they're going
Yep.
to go into the office and they're going to work a side gig while they're in the office. This has been happening for decades,
Yep.
and it's just easier now, right? Like there's so many opportunities, like and even somebody as inexperienced and unqualified as I am could probably go onto Upworks right now and probably, I don't know, in 15
Get
or
a
20
gig.
minutes get a gig.
Yeah.
I could do data annotation for 15, $20 an hour.
What
And
think about it though, if it's a really good point that you've brought up in this generation. This generation that has come up that is only familiar with the work at home situation. A lot of, well, one, here's some like free consulting advice. If you are a small, medium, large enterprise and you've hired recent graduates or MBAs, go talk to them. Engage, first of all, engage with them, right? Because engagement numbers are complete crap. Go engage with them and have non-scripted conversations with them. But what I would challenge you to do, go talk to them how they leveraged the remote tools of their school and their universities while they were getting learning all of this material and being able to learn, absorb, and um, pass tests, right? To test their knowledge, to be able to earn their degrees, to be able to earn their MBAs. Because I can tell you a lot of the tools businesses have access to right now, and you completely underutilize them. And these recent grads have gotten so resilient in finding solutions on how to use tools different way. Like if you look at G Suite for the Google tools, they're very, very underutilized. Every time I talk to a recent graduate, I'm saying, yeah, I want to do this with Google Sites or this on my, G Drive, we call it Google Drive. And they're like, well, yeah, you can do this, this, and this. You can share it this way. You can do that. Like they just immediately go into all of
right.
the ways that they've utilized it. And they got that during their online learning experience at college. And then they get to an office, right? Even if it is a remote work starting off before they RTO'd now, they're like, yeah, you guys aren't using this the best way. But shut up, you young kid. You don't know anything. We're gonna do it this way, and this worked in the
Yeah.
office, and so we're just gonna do it this way at home. And oh, it's not working in at home, so what do we got to do? Well, we're kind of Gen Xers and before, so everything was good in the office. Everybody come back to the office. I mean, that's what's going on right now. It's
No, I
comical.
agree. Well, it is comical. I mean, if in it is absolutely comical, and I think there is no one thing, right? I think it depends on the person, depends on the work, it depends on the outcomes and everything else. But I think regardless of all of that, my thing would be, why are we not talking about outcomes? I mean,
Yeah,
if coming to the office improves the outcomes because there's more collaboration and that's the type of work that's required, or I have to have people that are customer facing because they need to be customer facing,
right.
that is really powerful. But to just say return to office because, and
Yep,
then and to these all these other things that come into play because return to office is not it's not a neutral cost item. It is actually a significant decrease and you're basically taking money out of your employees' pockets. And so, like we just talked about a minute ago, like if what's the value of that $25,000 that I now have to spend in the course of a year, not including like, oh, and forget about things like who's paying for childcare, and what if I don't like the
right,
person that sits next to me at the office, or and some of the other challenges we had. Um, one of our EX 2025 panelists, Diana Chu, was telling me in her work with VCs and early startup CEOs, they're having a kind of interesting problem in where they do want people to come into the office, even like in startups, where there's a huge amount of that collaboration and brainstorming and stuff that goes on. They're having problems with just office etiquette.
right.
People showering before they come to work, people wearing clean clothes, people knowing how to pick up after themselves.
Well,
It's
they
just
don't know.
fascinating. They don't
They
know. They've
they
never
don't
had
know.
to do
They-
this, right?
but here's the thing. Here's the thing, Tim. Like I'm getting a little
No, it's good.
pissy about
Emotional
it
about it. Yeah.
because think about what you think about what you just said. People showering. Because here's what's happening when you work at home. And again, it's making sure you have the right jobs and the right vertical and it's evaluating all of those things and making the determination more objectively than knee jerk of, well, it working
Yeah.
when you're in the office to come back. But think about this. People aren't showering because guess what? They were so in tune to work and work from home that they would just plug up without showering in the morning and start working. You
Well,
think you're going to get that in the office?
well, you're not. And that's the other thing too. They were doing more hours. They were doing more engagement with their work
Yep.
and they were more, outcome driven than just, hey, I have to be here from this time to this time. I mean, I think about
Agreed.
all the money I spent over the years, and I'm going to date myself, but for a long time I had jobs that you wore a suit and tie to the office. And I know that's going to feel really strange to a lot of people listening to this, but and there were costs. You had a dry cleaning bill every month. You or somebody had to iron your shirt for you, right?
Yeah.
And you're going in and you're getting a haircut every couple of weeks or whatever. And all of these were costs that we just were part of the deal. And then we learned over 3 years of the pandemic that that whole model, I'm not saying it doesn't need to be there, but it needs to be evaluated. And
Exactly.
and so anyway,
Well,
it's just hysterical to me because you have this huge company and you pick your name, pick your company. There's many of them doing this right now. What's going to be the outcome? Now, if the outcome, the real under the covers intent is I need to, because of business performance or whatever, I want to reduce my labor costs by 15 or 20%, and I want to do it fairly quickly, and I don't want to pay severances. One way to do it is you manage everybody out, right? And we've all been there. And you do that by making work uncomfortable so that
yep.
people do pursue other opportunities. The challenge with that is guess who you're going to lose first?
Your best contributors.
Because they have the most options. And
Yeah,
the people you're going to be
exactly.
left with are the people who don't have options. And they
Right.
usually don't have options for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, it's the adjective that comes to mind when I think about this is lazy. And the reason why I say it's lazy is because it's not being evaluated like you just said and looking at piece by piece. And it like, look, it's going to be tedious, no doubt about it. Not everybody is as, I don't know, psychotic as I am. And like I look forward to analyzing stuff all the time. It's not stressful to me. It's actually, if anything, maybe stress relief, as crazy as that sounds. But I would look at each position and say, okay, can this be done at home safely and securely, or does it have to be done in the office? And then I kind of go down from there and manage it from that perspective and then look at the outcomes they need to deliver, the kind of ripple effect that that outcome that this individual contributor, and even if they are on a team of 15 people, I look at them as individual contributors. What kind of ripple effect does that have on the rest of the business? And I trace that out
Yep.
and figure out what are we losing? Again, it goes back to scarcity of talent and limiting your talent radii when you go back to saying, oh, it's a return to office. Well, you're only going to get people within a certain circumference or radius, right, of
The
that
office.
physical location. So
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
limiting your options to talent. And you had a whole bunch of talent that moved to like Montana.
Yep.
And you got Starlink access now, so you have high-speed internet in these previous remote locations. A lot of the talent is spread out. It's not as concentrated as it
Yeah.
used to be, but people are they're not thinking like that. And I don't know how many
That's if the,
more. Yeah.
yeah. No, I was going to say that's assuming they even know where the people are.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, with the
exactly.
digital nomad environment, I mean, we've all known these, people who are saying, "Hey, my tax address is, let's say for me,
PO
San
box.
Francisco,
Yeah.
whatever." Well, probably not a PO box, but maybe it is something they own. But
Right.
how often are they there
Actually
anymore? I
there.
mean,
Yeah.
like I knew people that were, going to Mexico for 7 or 8 months and saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, I can live in Mexico. I can rent my house out.
Yep.
My U.S. address, as far as for tax purposes, I'm I'm paying taxes and I'm earning and et cetera, whatever." And I think this where people like going back to the comment I made earlier about how easy it is to get a second or third digital gig
Right.
doing stuff where you work when you want to work, whether it's project management, whether it's analytics, whether it's whatever. I mean, God, there's just so many things that are more knowledge based than
Right.
used to be. And then if, when you think about it, well, geez, wouldn't that be a gig? I get salary X from a company that wants me to do return to office, but they're not, other than very simple set of, I can be quiet quitting there, do the
Yep.
minimum to keep from getting fired because people don't want to go through the hassle of firing you. And then I can have one, two, three, or four side gigs. And I remember Yahoo had this big thing, and this is now going back I'm trying to think of the woman who came in as the COO and wrote the book. But her big thing was we need to bring everybody back to the office because there was this huge thing about people having other careers while they were still working for Yahoo from home. And
Hmm.
you go, hey, who's that on? Who's that on? That's not on the individual. That's on you. That's on management. Because if somebody's
Well,
working at home and you're not managing to their deliverables, or they can get their deliverables done in 2 or 3 hours,
yeah.
what's wrong with them then, as long as they've completed their obligation
E-
to
e-
you?
Exactly. Exactly. Like what again, it gets back to outcomes. And now
Right.
here's I kind of think that's one of the biggest keys to all of this is the outcomes. And
Right.
now what I will say is it is challenging to objectively measure the outcomes. And what I mean by that is everything that we've talked about on this this podcast it, we see it kind of clearly, and we're always called in to not to the optimal situations. We're called into the crappy situations and to uncover all of this. So it's more intimate and familiar for us. But to everyday organizations, or even, you don't want to get to that point where it's like not a point of no return, but you're getting into like a red status. Companies need to recognize when they're getting there so they can try to predict their path and prevent the negative outcome that's there and make choices and decisions that are going to bypass that, right? That is extremely difficult. And so bringing together the right attributes or the right, like what I call indicators, um, companies got to start evaluating like the cause and effect relationship of every single role in their company and trace that back to those individuals and say, what is the contribution that this person and then the roll up of that team makes to outcome X that is, 2 degrees removed from our direct P&L delivery. It's not sexy. I can't make a commercial about what I just said, right? But that's what they need to do is go reevaluate the organization from the bottom up and look at everything like that and look at, hey, in 2024, moving into 2025, if I have a full-time employee that I'm fully burdened with paying benefits for, payroll taxes for, et cetera, am I getting an ROI on them because of the workload that I'm giving them is manageable on average, not individual. If you got one person in a team of 1,000 people, like, oh, well, they're hitting the metrics. Everybody should know. That's BS. What is the average, and is that acceptable? And are
Right.
there ways to improve that across the entire team so the moving average increases? And if there is an opportunity, or you find people that are getting it done that can share, their view of how they get these things done at the level and the speed and the quality that's, good,
Right.
and they have side gigs, who cares? Unless there's, some security measure or something like that, who cares?
Well, that's the case. I agree with you, and I think that obviously you have to be concerned about, are they complying with their NDA and their non-compete, et cetera. Um, Given in mind that all of these things are coming under pressure, but
Right.
I think we could probably talk about this for hours, but I think the key point that both of you and I are kind of leaning in on is hours in the office versus what are you managing to. And I think both you and I would say, well, what you have to manage to is outcomes. And are the outcomes aligned with the organizational goals and objectives, whether it's P&L or whether it's a not-for-profit or whether it's government, but are you delivering against the organization's objectives? And if you're not, then you got to take your time and step back and go, what are we doing with our resources to achieve our goals?
Right.
And now it's very possible you could be overstaffed. There's no question about that. Things have changed, work has changed. Are you doing, and that's great. I don't think forcing everybody back to the office is a great way to deal with that, but I think you would want to look at it on an individual basis based on the individual skills, objectives, and capabilities. So to sum it all up, I guess what I would say is return to office. Maybe it's the right thing, maybe it's the wrong thing, but it comes with a cost. And as long as you understand what those costs are, but I would step back and be really careful about what do I need the resources for, which you should do it all the time anyway, and how do
Hmm.
I align those resources with outcomes? And then most importantly, because these are people, how am I engaging and communicating with these people to make them feel that what they do has value, and that and if they don't, what we are seeing particularly with the millennials and Gen Zs is they will start looking for other work and they
Yep.
will become disengaged. And then all of a sudden your organization is in that 15, 20, 30% employee engagement range. And that is a massive, massive cost to be borne by the organization.
Agreed. Agreed. I would say in my wrap, I'm going to give everybody some free advice, and it's actually just a quote from some of the best consulting minds I've ever interacted with. It's
Not
called
me, of course, in that list.
me just messed up my whole tee up there, Tim. It's from the Bobs from the movie
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Office
yeah.
Space, and just ask yourself the question, what do you actually do here? What would you say you actually do here? Like seriously, start with that and then kind of go from there. And I think you'll be on the road to recovery.
Yeah, it's a great one. Great way to close it on that. It's one of the best scenes, I think. And you're right, though, but it's actually very, very true, and people don't do it. Somebody should write a book about that stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Anyway, thanks, Andreas. Thanks for the time again. And for the
yep.
listeners out there, please like and subscribe. We're really interested in growing our audience here. If there are different things you want us to be talking about, please let us know. But we're going to continue to lean in on what we think are the stop doing stupid stuff. And I think we talked about this last time, but maybe this is the time to announce that we would like to, as we move forward, we want to have a conversation every week around specific organizations that are in the news, where we have third party reporting to talk to, but with the goal of identifying who are the organizations that are the ones that are doing a great job of
Mhm.
stop doing stupid stuff, and organizations that maybe need some help. How does that
That
sound? And we have an
that
award for the end of the year in both
yeah,
categories.
I would say, send us your thoughts or articles that the listeners see and let us review those. Even if we don't discuss it live on a podcast, we'll still review it and assign, what is it called? I'm messing up the awards for it. And we'll report that back out. But we would appreciate any inputs. Don't let Tim and I always, scour the news articles here because we're a bit myopic in that view, and so we'd love to hear what your views are.
Yeah. Again, thanks everybody, and Andreas, thanks again for the time.
Yep. Right.
Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.